That's right, Roxanne. You don't have to put on the red light, Roxanne. You don't have to put on the red light, Roxanne. Roxanne,
I know what you're thinking. You are thinking, hang on, Farwell. It's Monday, isn't it? And it's not the first week of the month anymore, right? I guess it's the first full week of April. But usually when you hear music from the police, it's because the police are here, as in Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell and Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who join us on a monthly basis for Ask the Chief, first Tuesday of every month. This is indeed Monday, the 7th of April. But it was on this day in 1978 that the police released Roxanne as the first single from their debut album, Outlandos d'Amour. The song was written from the point of view of a man who falls in love with a prostitute. It failed to chart, but when it was re-released 1 year later, well, then it went to number 12 on the UK singles chart. Things get better with age, I suppose. At least that's what I keep telling myself, because every day is 1 day older. 6 minutes after 9 on this Monday morning. Good morning. How's your day going so far? Thank you very much for stopping by, spending some of your time with us here on the show. It is good to be back in the studio. As much as I enjoy the novelty of doing the show on the road, it's nice to be right back here with all of the creature comforts, even though I have no idea what happens in this studio while I'm gone. It's like people throw parties. There's a chair missing. The TV was askew. I kid you not, one of the TV monitors in here that helps me keep track of the commercials and how long the commercial breaks are was tilted at like a 45-degree angle. The only thing keeping it up, it seemed, was the corner of the TV hitting the ceiling. I was afraid it was going to fall down. I don't know what goes on in here while I'm away, but it's good to be back in the studio for these conversations with you for another week. And as you know, the moment we begin every day, phone lines are open so that every line of communication is available to you. We've got our social media platforms, the Facebook page, which you'll find under the Mike Farwell Show. You can email anytime, mike@570news.com. And of course, give us a call when you've got something on your mind at 519-570-2545, star 570, or 1-800-570-5715. We are the most interactive radio program you will find anywhere in this region. All right, let's get to that Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, how would you like to be 26 years old and earning $500 million? Well, that's what you would be doing if your name was Vladimir Guerrero Jr., as the Blue Jays signed the star slugger to a 14-year, $500 million contract. That is the richest deal in Blue Jays history and the second biggest deal in baseball history. I can't wait to talk to Blue Jay Hunter on Wednesday morning. He joins us every Wednesday during the Blue Jays season. Wednesdays at 11, Blue Jay Hunter. Cannot wait to hear how much of that money he's getting. Number 2 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning. History was made yesterday in the National Hockey League.
Ovechkin has it. He scores! He scores! Alex Ovechkin scores 895! There's a new goal-scoring champion, and his name is Alexander Ovechkin!
Yes, Ovechkin now has one more regular season goal than Wayne Gretzky, but Gretzky still has more than 1,200 more points than Ovechkin. Number 3, the Leafs strengthened their hold on top spot in the Atlantic Division with a win Saturday night over Columbus. And when the Leafs win, we usually get the chance for a little AM on AM in the AM.
It does come in front, backhand try by Knives. The stop by looks to centering back, they score! Matthews! Nothing new here. That's the 8th time he has beat Merzlikins in his career.
And that was the 30th goal of the season for Matthews, who now has 9 straight 30-goal campaigns. Number 4 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning. I promise it's not all about sports, but there's some pretty big stories. The site of the former White Rose retail store in Waterloo could see new life as an ethnic supermarket. It's been 20 years since the White Rose site on Weber Street near Lodge closed for good. And now an expanding supermarket chain in Ontario is interested in building one of its stores there. The plan will be presented to Waterloo Council next week. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 today, a Waterloo company is laying claim to the first X-ray ever done in space. KA Imaging created the technology that allowed the image of a hand with a ring to be taken in space. According to KA Imaging, the first X-ray in space is an incredible achievement, one that pushes the boundaries of medical imaging and human exploration, and its impact goes beyond space. The same technology that enables astronauts to monitor their health can also revolutionize imaging in remote and underserved areas on Earth. Advancing science in space should always mean progress for all of humanity, says Waterloo's KA Imaging, after the first X-ray was successfully taken in space. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. I came across something on a council agenda, and I know, look, there's 2 things. One, I'm a geek. Like, who reads council agendas on the weekend, right? And number 2, I will be the first to admit that sometimes the littlest things get me all wound up, and this is probably a case of that. But whether you are pro or anti amalgamation, and I know amalgamation is still a dirty word, but honestly, no matter which side you are on, I'm going to tell you the story of what I found in this council agenda, and I'm going to let you be the judge. Like, does this make any sense whatsoever? I'll tell you the story. You get to be the judge. I will be as impartial as I can be, but my knickers are knotted, my chaps are chafed because of it's just this itty-bitty little thing, but it shouldn't be a thing, in my opinion. I'll tell you the story, and then you can decide. Coming up, this is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Okay, we're going to play a little game this morning, and you are welcome, of course, to play along at home or wherever it is that you're listening today. The game is called Does This Make Sense? And you get to tell me if this makes any sense. You may already have a sense of how much sense I think this makes, but nonetheless, the story is yours to decide on here, okay? This is all connected to our new transit hub that's going to be built at the corner of King and Victoria in downtown Kitchener, which, by the way, like, might we be adding this new transit hub to the completion of an expanded Highway 7 or all-day two-way GO Transit? Because really, how much longer are we waiting? Is there a shovel in the ground at the transit hub? Out of curiosity. We've been talking about for how ding-dang long now, and there ain't nothing going on. I checked into that this morning. Don't you worry about it. I'm looking after things here. And I quote from our regional government, the region knows its residents have been waiting for improvements in this area for several years and is hopeful that with the province and Metrolinx's support, we'll be able to expedite and confirm the schedule in the coming months. That update was from 2024, June of 2024. So I guess we're not yet at a year. You could still call it months, but where's the schedule? What's going on? When are we going to put a shovel in the ground at King and Victoria? Huh? I'm very curious about that. But anyway, now that I've focused your attention on the transit hub, I want you to think about that part of downtown Kitchener, okay? And not far from the corner of King and Victoria is the corner of Victoria, or the intersection of Victoria and Duke. So I'd like you to put yourself at the intersection of Victoria and Duke, okay? So you're sitting at the stoplight there, and on your right is the cake box and that little strip plaza right near, to be honest with you, right next to the encampment at Weber and Victoria. So you got yourself situated there. You're at the traffic light, Victoria and Duke. And if you make a right-hand turn there, you go up the hill on Duke towards Breithaupt into what us old-timers call the North Ward of Kitchener. That's where the Farwell family roots are firmly planted, in the North Ward. So you're at Victoria and Duke. You'll take the right-hand turn right at the cake box in that little plaza. And up the hill you go. You're going to cross the train tracks. You're going to head towards Bright Up Street, etc. Okay? I know you're with me because you know this area pretty well. So as part of that transit hub that will someday, perhaps, like a unicorn, appear at the corner of King and Victoria in downtown Kitchener, they would like to, the region and Metrolinx would like to build an underpass or create an underpass at those train tracks on Duke near Victoria to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross, which makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't we do such a thing? Very similar work had been done way back when at Weber and Victoria by our Via Rail station. So we're going to put an underpass in as part of the creation of the transit hub. This all makes perfect sense to me. If the work ever starts, I don't know. But here's where it gets interesting. Before Metrolinx, and I found this, I confess, while reading a council agenda on the weekend. Before Metrolinx can start construction on the Duke Street underpass, the following must occur. Are you with me now? Because this is where you get to tell me if this makes any sense. Before the construction can start, this is what has to happen. A transfer of jurisdiction from the city of Kitchener to the region of Waterloo and the addition of parts of Duke Street to the regional road network. In other words, that part of Duke Street, right? You're right there at the stoplight, Victoria and Duke. You're going to turn right, go up the hill, cross the train tracks, go towards Bright Up, Wellington, etc. That's a city street under the jurisdiction of the city of Kitchener. But before Metrolinx can start work on the underpass, because it's a regional transit hub, the city of Kitchener must transfer jurisdiction of this bit of street to the region. But that's not all. This gets better, which is like, you should have seen me on Saturday morning when I was slurping my coffee and reading this, and my poor beloved thinks I'm losing my mind, because I kind of am. So the city has to transfer ownership of the road to the region. And then the region, the staff at the region will amend traffic and parking bylaws to reflect the addition of existing traffic regulations on this section of Duke Street to be assumed by the region of Waterloo. In other words, now that it's a regional road, it must have the regional bylaws applied to it. So I want you to think about this, please. You have a street. Okay, the street's not going to change. We're going to build the underpass, which makes sense. But the street is under control of the city of Kitchener. So we need to have people that are probably pretty damn well paid at the city of Kitchener to do the paperwork to transfer responsibility of the road to the region. Now there are people at the region, probably pretty damn well paid, to accept that transfer of jurisdiction and do all the paperwork on the regional end, and furthermore, change the parking bylaw. Tell me in what universe this makes sense. We want an underpass. The underpass makes sense. All of this, it's 2025. If you can make this make sense to me, and I know some of our municipal councillors are listening this second. You are also welcome to call and tell me how this makes any sense. Tell me how this is efficient government. I have said forever, and I will say again right now, a two-tier municipal structure is outdated. It's antiquated. It is wasteful. And this itty-bitty little 2-bullet point on a regional council agenda this week is the exact reason that the two-tier municipal system frustrates me. How do we need to go through all of this just to get an underpass built? How many salaries are being paid? It's utter nonsense, in my opinion. If you can make this make sense to me, I'm all ears. But this right here is the reason that we need to get rid of one level of local government. Come on with your coming on. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I don't want you to worry about anything, though, because the traffic regulations that were in place by the city of Kitchener will be continued by the region of Waterloo until such time as Duke Street West gets closed to the public. Like, what the city of Kitchener has in place, the region of Waterloo will give its royal blessing to. Again, tell me why. Tell me why there are two levels of local government. This makes my head hurt. Craig's email to Mike at 570news.com says, now you know why nothing ever gets done around here. Yeah, because the left hand doesn't communicate well with the right, or at least it communicates slowly. I just can't make it make sense. Mary is on the phone with us. Good morning, Mary. Mary just left the phone with us. I don't know why Mary hung up her phone, but she did. And it's too bad because I wanted to hear what Mary thought about this. Mary has lived in this community for a long time. And she has probably seen and or heard more than her share of such nonsensical nonsense. And yet, here we are. It's 2025, and this is how we do business in this community when it comes to local government. It's utterly ridiculous. So the next time somebody says to me, Farwell, you got to stop complaining about amalgamation. This amalgamation thing sucks. I mean, you know that's been said on this show before, right?
This whole amalgamation thing sucks.
Exactly. But really, does it? Because if you were to amalgamate, i.e. amalgamate the governments, we only need one local government. You wouldn't be going through nonsense like this just to create an underpass. And maybe someday, like if we tap our heels together 3 times and say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. I know I'm mixing metaphors here, but if we do that, we might just get a regional transit hub at King and Victoria someday. I don't know. Put a shovel in the ground and we'll see. Speaking of our regional government, a motion coming before it this week asks that we keep our CTS site on Duke Street in downtown Kitchener open and that we find the funding for it. Let's have that conversation coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. As you no doubt know by now, the provincial government has decided that consumption and treatment services sites or supervised injection sites in this province must close if they are too close to schools and or daycare centers. And they will be replaced, the provincial government says, with HEART hubs, HEART standing for homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs. And so among those consumption and treatment services sites to be closed are those in both Guelph and Kitchener. Pam Wolf is a regional councillor who represents Cambridge, has a motion coming to council this week to advocate for the continued operation of our CTS site in Kitchener. And Councillor Wolf joins us on the program. Pam, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike.
Why are you bringing this motion forward?
Well, I'm very concerned about the disregard shown by the Minister of Health for the injunction issued by Justice Callahan of the Ontario Superior Court. The injunction allows consumption and treatment sites to remain operational while the justice is making his decision and for 30 days after that. And basically the Minister of Health said no to funding. And I think I'm concerned when government doesn't follow the spirit of the law. And I think it's important that the regional council and, frankly, all people in Ontario don't remain silent. We criticize the U.S. when we see Republicans sitting quietly allowing the president to defy court orders. And I think that silence is extremely dangerous, and we need to call out government whenever we see them trying to be above the law and above human rights.
Should we sit quietly when we see people using illegal drugs?
Well, that's a complex question. And I don't think right now we have a drug poisoning crisis. And I think it's a responsibility for us to, just like if we had a problem with water. We have we issue a boiling water announcement. And I think with this drug poisoning crisis, we need to do everything we can to keep people alive. And that's what the, basically safe consumption sites have been doing.
You mentioned the court injunction that mandates that these sites remain open and for 30 days following, but they would have to be funded by the province, and the province has said it won't fund them. So would we, in your eyes, Pam, find the money locally to keep the site open?
Well, hopefully what this motion is doing is asking permission, first of all, for the sites to remain open and for the province to fund them. Which would be in compliance with the court order. At this point, I'm not asking regional council to fund them. The other part of the motion is to say that regional council would help support a CTS. And that isn't necessarily funding. It could be by writing a letter to the federal government, to our health Board of Health, in terms of there's funding that can be accessed, but they need support. So if a private, or a nonprofit wanted to open a CTS, right now they're not available, they're not allowed to. So they need basically government support to do that. I think I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I think this motion, where we're asking the province to at least step forward, is a start. So we're not remaining silent. We're asking them for permission. We're not, let's say, openly them. And that's where a lot of pushback I'm getting. People fear the provincial government, which is, to me, a shame. We should never fear government. I think they're afraid that if my motion passes, perhaps there won't be funding for the Heart Hub. And I can't see that happening, but I think the fear that we should be addressing is the fear that people have of dying, the fear that's being felt by CTS workers, shelter workers, community groups, emergency services, all who know that by closing the CTS, we're going to see an increase in overdoses. We're going to see an increase in public drug use. And these are real things and things that we really should be fearful of.
You certainly make the argument well, Pam, for keeping the CTS open. And there's no question it has proven itself to be a lifesaver. I think also, and this is just my take on it, but I think that this provincial government has proven itself to be ideologically opposed to these sites. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like a heart hub. Is there any room on this regional council, or did you consider advocating to support the Heart Hub or getting funding to the Heart Hub more quickly, as opposed to asking to keep something open that the province has made clear it wants closed?
Oh, I think we have advocated for the Heart Hub, and the Heart Hub is open. Unfortunately, they've only been given startup funding, so we just have a partial service. So I think the province announced that they had successfully transitioned. We haven't successfully transitioned. It's going to be months before we see any beds, laundry service, food, counseling, all of those things. We're going to have, and, when you think that the decision was made, I think back in November, in the fall, that we would get the funding and that a Heart Hub would open in Kitchener, yet the funding hasn't been finalized. It's supposed to be sometime in April, the end of April. I don't know. If they really were serious about transitioning seamlessly, they would have totally funded it in March so that we could hire people and, order beds and do all of those things. And they haven't. So But we have advocated very strongly for the Heart Hub funding. And the reality is we need both the Heart Hub and the safe consumption site. They could work hand in hand. We have to keep people alive to be able to go to the Heart Hub and access their services. And the Heart Hub isn't allowed to have safe injection or safe consumption, or harm reduction supplies. So, we're going to see, if we don't have needle exchange, if we don't have, other things that help people stay alive, the Heart Hub won't be doing all of the things it needs to do. And the other reality is we have 12 beds, and I'm not sure of what the current figures are, but they're in the thousands of people who have a substance abuse problem. And as you know from you're in the news business, the amount of drug poisoning that's still out there. So, I think the thing is, I would like the government to step up and not ignore the court injunction, respect the law, and return funding for the safe injection site, at least in the interim. I would also like them to, hurry up and fund the Heart Hubs as they promised they would. And, the more we can do to help, our most vulnerable citizens, it helps all of us. The Guelph Council just passed a budget increase of $500,000, $500,000, just because they anticipate the amount of ambulance use that's going to increase as a result of the closure of their CTS. I'm not sure what our figures are, but our emergency services were in favor of keeping the CTS, and they know that they're going to have increased, service calls.
Pam, I really appreciate you making time for the show today. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pam Wolf is a regional councillor who represents Cambridge, bringing forward the motion at committee this week asking that funding be kept in place for the CTS site on Duke Street in Kitchener. I'll just ask you this way, because we've heard from organizations that are supportive of harm reduction and the people who require those harm reduction services, i.e. a supervised consumption site. And they, like Councillor Wolf, are advocating strongly to keep the CTS site open. I know it's an unscientific survey, but let's have it here on the show this morning. Do you want a CTS site in your city, or do you want a Heart Hub instead? Is it an either or? Is it a yes and? You tell me on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I don't think right now we have a drug poisoning crisis, and I think it's a responsibility for us to, like if we had a problem with water, we issue a boiling water announcement. And I think with this drug poisoning crisis, we need to do everything we can to keep people alive. And that's what the basically safe consumption sites have been doing.
Regional Councillor Pam Wolf, who absolutely makes a fair and strong argument. CTS sites have been keeping people alive. I don't have in front of me the number of overdoses reversed at the CTS site in Kitchener, but we know that not a single person has overdosed at the site. So logically, one would say more people will die when that site closes. The challenge becomes, are we moving people away from this use of hard illegal drugs? Or are we merely helping them continue to exist in this life? And it's a very difficult balance to strike. And as you hear in that clip from Councillor Wolf, it's as much about the drugs themselves as it is about the poisonous nature of them as they become stronger and more deadly. So Councillor Wolf is bringing forward to council this week a motion that asks that the province of Ontario provide immediate funding and support to ensure continued operation of the Kitchener CTS site during the injunction period as ordered by a provincial court. What do you think? Do you want a CTS site in your city? Bluntly, let's take our own unscientific survey. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Carol is on the phone with us. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning. I find it ironic that Pam would talk about silence when Cambridge had all the proper things in place, finally, to apply for a CTS site. That's what we got from the community that supported it, the community that told anyone opposed to it about all the people who would die. Years after they had everything in place, they still never, ever put in an application. So we've heard all these stories before about how many deaths there would be and how awful it would be. The CTS site in Kitchener was put in place, and yet the numbers in that community continue to rise.
The number of users, yes.
Okay. I think that the heart hubs have a much better potential for upstream resourcing. We already know what the causes are. We already know the problems. It's multifaceted. Heart hubs are going to deal with all of that. They're not going to continually advocate for people to continue their bad habits in the hopes that we might rescue them. We're all aware that the current drug supply changes daily and gets more deadly. At some point, a CTS site will have a fatality. It won't be recorded in the statistics because they can't declare them dead there. They have to go to the hospital. But there will be deaths because of the increasingly dangerous drugs. We will not stop everybody from falling in the river, but we need to do what we can to prevent more of them from doing it. And that's what the heart hubs will do. The reality is we don't have unlimited tax resources. Let's put them where they're going to be more effective. The local CTS group, Sanguine, has already said they couldn't continue even with this court challenge being reversed temporarily because they don't have a lease anymore. There's so many things that would need to be put in place. Let's get the heart hubs up and running and see what they can do. They have better resources to tackle the multifacets that everybody recognizes are part of the drug problem.
All right, Carol, I appreciate that call. And I hear where you're coming from. The big challenge that we're facing right now is we're kind of in that in-between stage, aren't we? The CTS is closed. The Heart Hub is not yet fully operational, and those ever-important beds and the treatment that comes with them not in place. This is the struggle. But I think it's a fair point that Carol makes in the bigger picture, because sadly, even though there have been no deaths recorded at the CTS site in Kitchener, the number of opioid-related deaths in the region of Waterloo has continued to increase year over year. And the CTS site has been open since 2019. So after 6 years, is it time to try a different approach and maybe throw our efforts behind the support of that different approach being the heart hubs. That's the approach the provincial government is taking. Councillor Pam Wolf hopes to see some action on her motion at Regional Council this week. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Clive sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. How about we set up a GoFundMe page and see how many people are willing to invest their money into keeping the CTS site open? And the regional councillors can say, we'll match the community's investment. It's another idea, I suppose. Look, there's no question that this provincial government intends on moving in a different direction. So while I admire Pam Wolf's motion and the arguments behind it, I think we might be better served advocating for and doing our best to support the heart hub, because that's the direction we're moving, whether we like it or not. I don't see this provincial government providing any funding to keep our CTS or any other CTS site open. I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then we know that since Mark Carney has become the leader of the federal Liberal Party, the Liberals have enjoyed a resurgence in the polls. So how does Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre now play catch-up? We'll talk about that coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Three weeks from today, that is April the 28th. That is federal election day as the campaigning continues in earnest. And we talk more about the campaign with our next guest, who is Tim Powers, a political columnist with the Hill Times and the chair of Summa Strategies. Tim, good morning.
Mike, good to talk with you. How are you doing? Only 3 weeks. Only 3 weeks. Jeez, that seems like a long time, though, too, doesn't it?
Doesn't it feel like we've already been campaigning for 3 months, maybe even longer?
I'm going to put the sole square blame on that guy south of the border. He just makes every day seem like 100 days in one day, and God knows what happens when you start the morning and when you go to sleep at night when you put your head on the pillow.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Tim, look, when it comes to this campaign, we know the shiny bauble and the novelty of it is always exciting for a moment. But besides that, what do you see from Liberal leader Mark Carney that has helped the Liberal Party kind of find its footing and maybe even leap forward in this race?
Well, a couple of things, but let me start with this, that he's using the I'm not a politician, I don't have a lot of political experience to great benefit, and is getting the benefit of the doubt from that. So, he's made some mistakes along the way, some of them arguably fairly high profile, mixing up his candidates, the woman who had been shot at L'École Polytechnique, and saying that happened in Concordia. Normally in Quebec, to make a mistake of that gravity would be debilitating, but no, the Liberals are doing well in Quebec. He's had some early flubs around some other issues, but I think he really has captured not just Liberals, but other Canadians who are seeing this person who isn't obviously a polished political performer, and he has a calmer demeanor, and they're juxtaposing that with Donald Trump, and they're saying, hey, maybe that's not so bad, which unfortunately for Pierre Poilievre, who, look, in December, probably everybody was saying he was 6 months away from moving into whatever the current residence of the Prime Minister is. Not 24 Stornoway, or 24 Sussex Drive. He now comes across as too much of a politician, too much of a master of the arts, which normally would be very helpful for him. And he, to be fair to Pierre Poilievre, not benefited at all by the fact that the election has so far focused on every word, utterance, and threat of Donald Trump. His whole campaign plan was not built around that. So things working for Carney, not for Poilievre, though there appears to be some tightening in the race. We'll see how it goes over the next number of weeks. How
does Pierre Poilievre then counter this and maybe make that race less tight again? Because I'm with you. We were basically calling him Prime Minister Poilievre 4 or 5 months ago. So how does he change this narrative back in his favor?
Well, I think he's got to continue to play on the field that he doesn't want to play, and you saw more of that last week. So he's got to find ways into the Trump anxiety, concern, fears, describe it as you will, how Canadians are feeling about Trump. You saw in Toronto, it was just on the road from you last week, he brought in Caroline Mulroney, well-respected minister in Doug Ford's government, but also, daughter of Brian Mulroney, who was the architect of the free trade deal. She endorsed him. He gave a long policy-focused speech. I think he's got to continue to do that. I think, it's in these things, Mike, luck matters. He's got to hope that as Mark Carney has had some luck, maybe he gets a bit of a streak of luck on a lot of the affordability type policies there. He is trying to push, and he's right to make this argument, that the Liberals are seeking their fourth term, and are you sick of all of this? But that doesn't seem to have gotten traction outside of conservative voters. He says he's going to stay on that track. probably not too bad, but he's got to find a balance between talking about Trump and keeping the conservatives that were interested in him still with him. The last thing I'd say, if we are where we are next week, heading into debate week, Poilievre has to use arguably the advantage he could have in the debates, being a more seasoned politician against Carney, because if we get through the debates and there's no major incidents in terms of Trump or the Canadian political landscape and things are still the same, each day gets harder for the Conservatives.
You mentioned that Pierre Poilievre has to keep with him the Conservatives that have been coming along to date. And I wonder about the party itself and if there are any fractures beginning to appear. It seems that way to me, Tim.
Listen, Mike, any day the Conservative Party, as somebody who's spent a lot of time in that party, is like an Irish wake. It starts off nice till they pour the few rums or whiskeys or Irish car bombs, and then the fists are flying. It probably has not helped Pierre Poilievre. It certainly hasn't. Danielle Smith and Preston Manning weighing in, Mr. Manning in the way he did about Mark Carney being a threat to unity. And, of course, the first week of the campaign where well-regarded Corey Teneycke, the chief strategist for Doug Ford, was very condemnatory of the campaign and had also released some polling that showed how much the Conservatives were struggling in Ontario, and they continue to, based on opinion polling. So usually, Mike, that's a hallmark of the fourth week of the Conservative campaign. If they're in trouble, if that keeps up and, Danielle Smith keeps doing what she's doing and other figures from, Mr. Manning's era come forward with that national unity at crisis, Mr. Poilievre is going to have to deal with all of that. And when you're dealing with your own party and you look like you can't run your own party, Canadians take note of that.
Interesting times, many weeks still to come, which will feel like many months probably. But Tim, always appreciate your perspective. Thanks for making time for the show this morning.
Just make every day an Irish wake, Mike, and you'll get through it.
I'm going to do that. Taking your advice. Thanks, Tim.
Nice to talk to you. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Tim Powers is the chair of Summa Strategies. He's also a political columnist with the Hill Times. I do find this, just as an observer, fascinating because it was, as we know, 4 or 5 months ago, Prime Minister Poilievre, basically the PM in waiting. Things have changed. But beyond the shiny bauble, that is the newness of Mark Carney, there's also now this infighting happening within the Conservative Party itself. Does Pierre Poilievre play too nice with the further reaches of the right side of that Conservative Party? Is this party about to eat another one of its leaders for breakfast? Hello, Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole. Is Pierre Poilievre next a one-and-done campaign? Here's what I'm curious about. If we can get past the shiny bauble and the newness of Mark Carney, what issue matters to you in this election? What are you looking for? Is it someone to stand up against Donald Trump? Is it someone who restores affordability? What is it that you're looking for? What issue matters to you in this federal election? Would love to hear that as we take another informal, unscientific survey here on the show this morning. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
He now comes across as too much of a politician, too much of a master of the arts, which normally would be very helpful for him. And he, to be fair to Pierre Poilievre, not benefited at all by the fact the election has so far focused on every word, utterance, and threat of Donald Trump. His whole campaign plan was not built around that. So things working for Carney, not for Poilievre, though there appears to be some tightening in the race. We'll see how it goes over the next number of weeks.
Tim Powers is the chair of Summa Strategies. He's also a political columnist with the Hill Times. He joins us this morning to talk about Pierre Poilievre and what he needs to do in order to reverse the trend. And it may just be a short-term trend. 3 weeks today, we have the final poll, the poll that really matters, which is federal election day. And Pierre Poilievre may well come out on top. But there's been no questioning the resurgence of the Liberal brand under Mark Carney, and beyond the newness of that, what might be the reasons behind it? And what does Pierre Poilievre then have to do in order to reverse the trend that has seen this Liberal resurgence. What I'm most interested in right now, because we've talked before about the polls and the popularity of the Liberals under Mark Carney, and maybe even the popularity of Mark Carney himself, but what is it you're looking for? What issue is of greatest concern to you in this election? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. John, good morning.
Morning, it's Hespler Johnny, Michael.
Hespler Johnny, my friend, good morning.
Morning. Couple of things real quick. The biggest issue for me is the national debt, and the second is immigration. I think we spend way too much time worrying about Mr. Trump. There's nothing we can do about him. We can't vote him out. We can't vote him in. All we can do is buy Canadian. I drive around every morning and get my tea at Timmy's, and I count election signs. And this morning, out of the 100 signs that were up, 68 were Conservative, 22 were Liberal, 10 were NDP, no Green. So that either means the polls are way off or there's a lot of ashamed Liberal voters who don't want to put signs on their lawn. And one more quick thing, Mike. Voting Liberal is kind of like pooping your shorts and then changing your shirt. You still stink. So have a great day.
All right, John, thanks for that moment of levity at the end. Speaking of signs, I live in Kitchener Centre. I took a nice walk because it was a beautiful morning with Rosie the pandemic pup yesterday. And again, anecdotal, unscientific, but I can tell you in the last federal election, it was essentially a sea of green in my riding. And on this particular walk, it was almost a dead heat, Green and Liberal, which surprised me because I don't know that I saw a single. Why, maybe the Liberal signs in 20... Was that when Raj Saini got ousted late? That was the 2021. My gosh, how time flies. That would explain it. And yes, some conservative as well. I didn't count them all, as Hespler Johnny has done, but I certainly noticed more red than in the past and some blue in there as well, which also wasn't the case in the last federal election. Interesting times. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, and amen to the fellow from Hespler. I'm from Cambridge, and I'm saying to you, once in a while you have on your show, and once in a while you get in your media about the debt and what we're paying on the debt. But I'll tell you something, Mike, there isn't an excuse that the Liberals can't jump on to spend money. And now our debt is getting so high, it doesn't affect me personally, but it's going to affect all our kids. They're the ones that are going to grow up and with all this huge debt. And I remember 2 decades ago, they were talking about the kids and the unbelievable wealth they were going to receive when our generation passed away. Well, no, now they're going to get a huge, huge debt. That's all I have to say, and my hat's off to the fellow from Hespler.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the call. And I will concur. I've said this many times. I want somebody who can mind our economic house, please and thank you. And frankly, I was encouraged by at least what I thought to be Mark Carney's ability to do that, mind our economic house. Heck, Pierre Poilievre has been in government, albeit in opposition for the last decade, while our debt has spiraled and our deficit has gotten out of control. But I'll tell you what, Jim Balsley, whose name is very well known in these here parts, of course, as one of the founders of BlackBerry, wrote a scathing review of or response to Mark Carney's economic principles and how he intends on improving the economy in this weekend's Globe and Mail. I devoured it because I think that somebody like Jim Balsley may know a thing or two about how to increase productivity, how best to inject some energy into our economy. And he could not have been further apart from Mr. Carney's position on our economy. So that certainly dampened my enthusiasm for Mark Carney's ability to be a good steward of the economy. I don't know where I'm at 3 weeks out. Bob, what about you? What's the issue that matters to you in this election?
Well, I'm glad that the Liberals are talking about working with the provinces to improve health care.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure.
And letting doctors who have medical degree from other countries become doctors here faster. And I'm glad to see a party that spent money during COVID to save lives and cut taxes. Now, if you want to talk stink, talk about hysteria under the Conservative government when Maple Leaf had the problem with the meats because they cut back on inspectors. Have a good day, Mike.
All right, Bob. Appreciate the call. Bob is best known in these here parts as Liberal Bob. You always know which side of the political spectrum he's coming from. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our update in the 570 News Center, back to the phones, find out more from you about what issue matters to you in this federal election. Terry, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. The two callers you had, the one guy who made reference to pooping your shorts and changing your shirt.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if, and he was talking about the deficit and this and that, I'm sure if they were to cut taxes and you know, try to fight the deficit somewhat, and then they were to do it at the expense of, you know, reforming health care, let's say let the insurance companies take care of it, I'm sure he'd probably be the first one to complain. You can't blow and suck at the same time. Like, yeah, let's kill the Canada Health Act. There's a way to fight the deficit. Look at the tax money that you wouldn't have to, you know, cough up to provide public health care. You can let, you know, go to a two-tier system and let the insurance, private insurance companies carry most of the freight for that. There's one way of finding our, you know, trying to deal with this deficit.
I think another way of trying to deal with the deficit, Terry, is slashing. And I do mean with a hatchet. Get in there with a scythe and slash the federal civil service. It's ridiculously bloated. I also would like to repatriate some of the tax dollars that we've been told. We know billions of them exist in these offshore tax havens that we could be. In fact, we hired people at Canada Revenue whose sole purpose was to get those billions back. Where are they? Two ways I would immediately tackle the deficit.
I agree there, sir. But I think killing the Canada Health Act would be a great good.
Well, nobody said we should do that, though. Not one of the callers who said tackle the deficit said
he didn't. I know that he didn't say that. But well, I'm sure if they did do that, they'd probably be the first ones to complain.
Probably would, but nobody said to do that. I just gave you two ways that could get us billions of dollars back. Billions.
Yeah. Good luck with that. But I think the healthcare system. Well, I mean, look at the healthcare system. Like it's in shambles.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
People are waiting. My brother waited 6 years to get new hips.
I get you.
Come on.
I get you.
Yeah. So let's kill that. And that's a great way because our tax dollars is not going towards providing great health care.
Listen, Terry, I got to get to
Mike,
news.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to have a circular argument. Nobody said to cut the health transfers. Nobody said that. And frankly, if we took the billions back from the two suggestions I gave you and reinvested it in a reimagined healthcare system, maybe we'd have less to complain about. That might be that, too. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, you no doubt know by now that we are passionate supporters on this program of our arts community in this region. And there is an awards banquet coming up, a gala evening in memory of Bernice Adams, the Bernice Adams Legacy Awards. Bernice has a long legacy in Cambridge, and a committee member with those awards, Bill Ashwell, joins me in studio. Hey, it's great to see you. Thanks for stopping in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Can you share some background with us on who Bernice was and what these awards are all about?
Sure. Bernice Adams was, for many years, an alderman / councillor for the city of Cambridge. And sadly enough, she passed away in 1980 at the age of 45. 2 years later, in 82, they established a scholarship and bursary fund in her memory. And out of that came the Bernice Adams Awards. And the awards themselves, back to Bernice, she was just, I think to put it simply, she was basically kind of a force of nature under herself. She was local politics. She was on regional council. She was an active member of the Galt Little Theatre at the time, and most notably, I think too, she was a radio personality on CFTJ radio at the time. So, yeah, left a really indelible mark on the community when she passed. So, as I said, the bursary and scholarship fund came out of that, and then out of that came the awards. So, brings us to where we are now with it.
And to describe her as a force, Bill, I think is the perfect word for her.
It is.
Yeah.
It totally is.
Absolutely. So I know we're set for a gala in a little over a month to celebrate the awards and the winners, but nominations...
May 22nd.
May 22nd. Okay, that's the date. But the nominations are open right now. How can folks apply?
Well, the nominations actually for this year have closed.
Okay.
We've selected the finalists and the winners. But nominations are open all year round. So if anybody wanted to nominate somebody in visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, communication, music, outstanding youth, and we also have what we call a Heart of the Arts Award, which doesn't quite describe it, but the closest I can come to it is like a lifetime achievement and a lifetime contribution award. And so out of all of those, we accept nominations for those all year round. So if you've missed the deadline this year, keep that person in mind for next year and get the nomination in as soon as you can.
I can only imagine the work that you and your fellow committee members have to go through in order to sift through the nominees and make these ultimate selections.
It's a lot of work, but it's just amazing to see, when you go through the nomination packages, just to see the depth of commitment and the talent that's out there in the community. It's totally amazing to see, and I've been on the committee myself now since 2008, and it surprises me every year. I'm not getting jaded about this at all, so...
What inspired you to get involved and be a part of this?
I actually won the award for literary arts in 2007, and I was invited to apply for the committee following that, and I've served as vice chair, past chair, and I'm just a sitting trustee now on the committee, but. It's just a sense to give back to the community. I grew up with a strong sense of a volunteer spirit with my family. My folks were both. My dad was a scout leader. My mother was a guide leader, and it was just a means to give back, through a way that I was able to do.
And when you consider, Bill, the caliber of applications that have come in again for another year for these Bernice Adams Legacy Awards, what does that tell you about the state of arts in our community?
It's encouraging. Yeah. It's very encouraging to see that. It sometimes kind of goes in cycles. You've got up years, you've got down years, whatever, but sometimes you can't just look at it in terms of quantity, the number of applicants. You got to look at the quality of the applicants, and it's mind blowing just to see that, year after year, the people that are just, the visual artists that are coming in, and it's just, I think there is a strong arts and cultural community in Cambridge. About a week or so after the Bernice Adams event, we've got the Cambridge Celebration of the Arts coming up. So it's kind of bookending, a great way to kick off the summer season.
Absolutely. So you mentioned May 22nd as the date.
May 22nd, yeah.
What else do we need to know about the awards?
It's at the Roseville Estates.
Gorgeous place.
And I've never been there, but it should be really nice. Tickets go on sale, I think, May 1st, and early bird tickets are $55 each, and then after May 1st, then it's $70, and that includes entertainment for the night. We've got Kyle Logue, who's a local actress, musician. She'll be playing the harp for us. And just some of the dignitaries, from City Council will be there. We have a silent auction table, and the proceeds from that will go into the scholarship and bursary fund. And we'll have a lot of items on the silent auction tables to select from. I think it's just, it just promises to be a great night. Great night,
So get those tickets early, save the $15. It's $55 early bird, $70 after
That's
May
correct.
the 1st. And if you want to learn more, BerniceAdamsLegacy.com is the website.
And or to Cambridge.ca, the city's website.
City's
too, as
website
well.
takes you right there because the city is very supportive of this, obviously, because of that force that Bernice Adams was.
Absolutely. So,
Bill, I love the work that you're doing. Keep it up, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bill Ashwell is a committee member with the Bernice Adams Legacy Awards. I'll point you again to BerniceAdamsLegacy.com and join us on May the 22nd at Roseville Estates. It's a beautiful venue, and we'll celebrate the arts community in Cambridge. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it may not exactly feel like it yet, but this is the first full month of spring. Come on with your coming on, spring. We're anxiously waiting. It's a nice sunny day today, and I keep peeking at the long-range forecast, and things are looking better weather-wise in the days and weeks ahead. But nonetheless, as we enter a new month, being now on the 7th of April, what do the skies have in store for us? A stargazer's delight as we're joined by Orbax science communicator from the Department of Physics at the University of Guelph, the great and wonderful Orbax. Good morning, sir.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing just great, thanks. How about yourself?
Pretty good. It's sitting out here, desperately trying to will it into being spring. Sitting on my back porch, a little bit chilly this morning, but I'm taking that as a possibility that we're moving forward to being warmer.
It's got to be, and with the sun, you know what? I mean, it gets better and better every day, right?
It seems to, although the forecast this week seems like it's going to be pretty rotten. But
hope springs eternal. That's what I tell myself.
There you go.
Once every time. Exactly. So now that we're into April, Orbax, I think anyway, that the star of the celestial skies is the Lyrids meteor shower that's coming our way.
Yeah, that's right. We're end of the month. So I guess, technically between April 15th and 29th, we're going to be exposed to the Lyrids meteor shower. The peak is on the night of the 21st this year into the morning of the 22nd, where we should be seeing up to about 15 meteors an hour taking place. And we can actually see this one before midnight this year as well. So you're going to have that opportunity to see those. Now, like I said, it does take place from the 15th to the 29th, so it kind of gives us the whole second half of the month to look forward to, based on the fact that the first half seems like it's going to be a lot of clouds and snow. So I've got my fingers crossed that we're going to be able to see it. But it's kind of our first, I don't know, I like to think of it as kind of the first burgeoning of spring, as we get out of this winter that kind of was just clouds the entire time. A meteor shower is a fun thing to look forward to.
Do we need, because spring usually, we talk about April showers, bringing May flowers, etc. I mean, I suppose the clearer the sky, the better. Can the conditions impact our ability to see the event in the sky?
Of course. I mean, the biggest enemy of any stargazing is cloud coverage. So we're just hoping that it's going to be nice and clear, or at the very least windy, and those clouds will just keep moving as quick as they can.
So anybody who is inclined to gaze at the night sky, you mentioned from the 15th through the 29th, so we've got a pretty big window here. But yeah. Where and what should we be looking at? Where should we direct our gaze?
Well, the Lyrids are named after the constellation of Lyra the Lyre. And Lyra has this incredibly bright star in it called Vega, which is going to be very visible. That's the one that you're looking for. So if you can spot that in the night sky with any of these stargazing apps that are readily available, I rather than tell people these days, look north, look south, look west, look east, nobody's doing that. They just look down at your phone, open your stargazing app, hold it up, and you're going to be looking for Vega. And right to just to the right of that, you should be able to spot that's called the radiant. And that's just the location in the night sky that it looks like the meteors are coming from. But in reality, these meteors streak a huge portion of the sky, so you're going to be able to tend to see them anywhere. But I would say take a look for Lyra the Liar, look in that direction, spot Vega. And the nice thing about, as I mentioned, the peak of that night of the 21st is the moon doesn't even rise until 3:30 that day. 3:30 in the morning. So it should be a nice dark sky, and you should be really able to spot it. So fingers crossed.
You hit on something else I was wondering about. If the moon isn't rising until 3:30 in the morning, are we pulling all-nighters here? Do we need a thermos of coffee, Orbax?
Yeah, no. This one you can actually spot before midnight. So I would say, definitely the peak occurs, the highest number of meteors, which can be up to 15 an hour on this meteor shower. So that's one every few minutes. Will be after midnight, but prior to midnight, you should still be able to see something.
Okay. We'll keep our eyes on the skies. The most intriguing time will be the 15th through the 29th, and we, like you, will continue to wait for the warmer weather, too. It's got to be here soon. We know the Lyrids are coming. Now we need the warmer weather.
Agreed.
Orbax, thanks for being here, as always.
No problem. Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Orbax is a science communicator from the Department of Physics at the University of Guelph. If you look up the physics department's page for the University of Guelph on YouTube, you'll find Orbax's monthly stargazing guide. And if you're into that sort of thing, which I know so many are, those backyard telescopes and whatnot, we're in for a treat between the 15th and the 29th of this month with the Lyrids meteor shower and several of those meteors streaking across the sky. The best time for viewing being between the 15th and the 29th. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, did you hear? Did you hear how many impaired drivers in just 1 hour were stopped by our regional police service? If you didn't hear it, I'll tell you about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Early Friday morning, which is one of the parts of this story that caused me to raise an eyebrow. Sadly, not the biggest part of this story that causes me to raise an eyebrow. But if it happened early Friday morning, what in HE double hockey sticks were all of these people doing on Thursday night? For most of us, Friday's a work day, right? Anyway, not to make light of any of this, but if you hadn't heard, it was early Friday morning that Waterloo Regional Police laid not one, not two, or even three or four, but 12 charges for impaired driving. 12 impaired driving charges in 1 hour. Early Friday morning, right here in the good old region of Waterloo, 12 impaired driving charges in just 1 hour. To put it another way, one every 5 minutes. But the thing about this, and we've talked about it so many times on the show, when are we going to get more serious about the way that we deal with impaired driving? Because we are not doing a good job of this at all. If there are 12 people within 1 hour in our region who are being charged with impaired driving, something is wrong. The penalties clearly are not stiff enough to act as deterrent. I don't know where we go with this, but there is very little that chafes my chaps as much as people who get behind the wheel while impaired. If you want to go out and have a couple of wobbly pops, fill your boots. Lord knows I enjoy going out for some wobbly pops. I also ensure that I am not driving while impaired. It's not hard to stay sober enough to drive. So if you're not staying sober enough to drive, you really need to check yourself. And we need to figure out what it is that we're doing wrong, that this message, after all of these decades, is not getting out there. I still don't think the penalties are near stiff enough, but 12 people in 1 hour in our region early on Friday morning. And then over the weekend, did you hear about this jackwagon? 21-year-old kid. Yes, I know, under the eyes of the law, at 18, you're an adult. Well, I'm calling you a kid, especially because OPP clocked this driver at more than 260 kilometers per hour on the 427 north, up near the Vaughan area, north of Toronto. 262 kilometers per hour, a 21-year-old man now facing charges of stunt driving. And oh yeah, by the way, when they pulled him over, he also failed a roadside sobriety test. So not only was he driving 262 kilometers per hour, he was also driving that speed while impaired. And can we just pause for a moment and ask ourselves, A, why anybody feels the need to drive 262 kilometers per hour on a provincial highway? And B, why cars even need to go that fast? Is the 427 the new NASCAR track? Is that what's going on here? Come on with your coming on. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I mean, you won't get fooled again, right? An absolute classic from The Who, but somebody got fooled with regard to one of the greatest bands in rock history. We'll get to that on This Week in Music History, as we do every Monday morning at this time with our friendly musicologist, Brian Allison. I encourage you to check out his Facebook page, This Week in Music History, for some of what you hear today and so much more. Brian, good Monday morning.
Hi, Mike.
How's things going?
Things are going good. How about you?
Also good, thank you. I always look forward to this, and I can't wait to get to that Who story. But we'll go there after we talk about one of, in my humble estimation, the greatest albums of all time. And I'm not even a huge Beatles fan, but how can you not love Sgt. Pepper's?
Well, it was just groundbreaking, and really, it turned the music world on its head because it was something that had never happened before. So we're going all the way back to 1967 before Mike and I were even around, probably.
It's true.
And it was on April the 6th that the Beatles turned in their first master tape for the new album, which would become Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And once that album was released, it was pretty remarkable how it was received by the music listening public and music fans all over the world. It really was groundbreaking in that it was something that musicians hadn't really considered the studio as a tool before. It was a place to record music, but it wasn't a place to kind of experiment. And the Beatles showed the world that, a lot more can be done. There are things that we can add to our music and our repertoire in the studio that would make the music that much more interesting. And Sgt. Pepper was that album, and it just exploded. And then everybody wanted to Sgt. Pepper, right? It became, okay, here's a game changer. We don't just have to go in and play our instruments and sing. There's a lot of other things that could be added into the mix here to make the music more interesting. So Sgt. Pepper was important just for that. And then other things, it was a concept album. So there was a loose storyline. You can talk amongst yourselves about what that storyline actually is, but people still, are hearing that today. And, other things that the Beatles did. It was the first time that, for instance, on an album, there were no gaps between the songs. They sort of all just blended together to create one giant piece, and that was different at the time. It was very unique. So just groundbreaking and huge in music history for sure.
And any fan of music and its history, Brian, would likely know that in response to what the Beatles were doing and the way they were making use of the studio, etc. The Beach Boys were insistent that they had to keep up in some way, even though we might not always connect the Beatles and the Beach Boys, but that's what leads us to Pet Sounds from the Beach Boys, which was kind of their, and I would say arguably the best album they ever put out. Sadly, on This Week in Music History, it wasn't exactly a great moment for the Beach Boys in the early 70s.
No, it's sad that the Beach Boys kind of crashed. There was a period of time in the early 70s where they kind of couldn't get arrested, and they were coming off being, people did say that it was sort of like the Beach Boys were America's answer to the Beatles. I never really subscribed to that opinion. I think they're two very, very different bands. I think they came from very, very different backgrounds, and their musical approaches were completely different. But, there was a time when popularity-wise, America, the Beach Boys were sort of America's band, and then you had the Beatles leading the British invasion, of course, around the same time. But by 1973, things were not going so well for the Beach Boys. They were at a really, really low ebb in popularity in America, their home. And it was really apparent on April 11th, 1973. They were booked to do a show at the Omni Coliseum in Atlanta, which is it's a good-sized venue, 16,000 capacity. And they came in with an opening band called Mother's Finest and another guy on the middle bill called Bruce Springsteen. Might have heard of him in his earliest days. And they couldn't sell 3,000 tickets in this 16,000 capacity venue. And the promoter actually took to the streets with tickets in hand and was trying to give them away to the good folks of Atlanta to try to, fill some seats in this massive venue. And it didn't work. Most of the tickets that were even given away for free, people didn't show up for it. So it just kind of showed that, rock and roll in America can be very fickle, and the country will turn on a band quickly and decide, well, you're not really fashionable anymore, so, we're not going to come out and support you. But it did pick up for the Beach Boys. They became more of a nostalgic act as the 80s approached and started to sell a lot more tickets and are still out there in some capacity touring. I think the only original band member left might be Mike Love, but yeah, the original brothers who formed the band, the Wilsons, are not touring with the band anymore.
Yeah, and you're right about Mike Love, and I know that because I saw a picture of him in Sudbury at a Wolves playoff game because the Beach Boys, in air quotes, were playing in Sudbury last week. So there you go.
Interesting.
Yes,
yeah, and
indeed.
I don't know who.
It's Mike Love and some guys.
Yeah, that's right. So I think you and I have had this discussion before, is when is it still the Beach Boys and when is it just sort of a propped up tribute to the Beach Boys?
Yeah, exactly. We do something on this show, even though it's a talk show, for fun on Fridays, letting people make their requests of a favorite song they want to hear a little bit of during the show. And one of our regulars, Brian, loves hearing from Alice Cooper. Big Alice Cooper fan, but I wonder if he knows the story of what happened to Alice Cooper back in 1988 during a European tour.
Well, we almost lost Alice. Pretty scary. And I don't think it was, it probably wasn't the first time that Alice himself had a brush with death, but this was a definitely scary one. So it was actually today in 1988. Alice was appearing with the band at Wembley Stadium, and they were doing a dress rehearsal in the afternoon. And part of Alice's show, a lot of theatrics obviously involved in his show, was him actually hanging himself by a gallows. So they had rigged it so that he would have a noose around his neck that appeared to be hanging him, but then he had a wire harness, and when they dropped him, it would be the wire harness that would catch him, and the rope would just appear to be taut. Well, during this rehearsal in the afternoon, the safety harness snapped, and Alice went down, and the rope tightened around his neck, and he was hanging there perilously for a second or two before one of the roadies realized what was going on and, saved him. But he came very, very close to actually dying on stage. It wasn't in front of a crowd because it was a dress rehearsal, but still a practice version of what it was going to be for the show. And, a little scary moment there for Alice. He made it through.
Do not tempt those fates, Brian. Do not tempt them.
Wow, it is. When you think about it, it just kind of sends a little shiver up your spine.
It certainly does.
If he'd have died, we'd be having a very different conversation right now.
We certainly would. Brian Allison is our resident musicologist. He joins us every Monday morning at this time for This Week in Music History. Don't forget to check out his Facebook page under that same name, This Week in Music History. So who got fooled by The Who and why? And what rare club does Merle Haggard belong to? We'll get into that and more as we continue This Week in Music History with musicologist Brian Allison here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Mondays on our program are made for music history. Every Monday morning at 11, musicologist Brian Allison joins us for This Week in Music History. And I just want to make sure I've got this straight, Brian. You're telling me that the legendary drummer of The Who on This Week in Music History did not want to play the opening ceremony for the Olympics?
No, Keith Moon could not make it in 2012, but I think he had a valid excuse.
Okay.
So it's such a great story, and it just goes to show, like people just not doing their homework. This took place during the 2012 London Olympic Games, and the organizers were feeling out if The Who would like to be part of the opening ceremonies. Being in London, The Who being a legendary band from London, sure, what a great idea. Let's get The Who to come out. So they contacted The Who's management to ask if all the members, especially Keith Moon, would be able to perform at the forthcoming London Olympic Games. Failing, of course, to realize that Keith had actually died 34 years earlier in 1978.
Oops.
So Keith, the Who's manager, a fellow named Bill Kerbishley, told the Times how he responded to this request, and I quote, "I emailed back saying that Keith now resides in Golders Green Crematorium. Having lived up to the Who's anthemic line, I hope I die before I get old." Kerbishley added, "If they have a round table, some glasses, and some candles, perhaps we could contact him."
I love that last part. I really do.
Yeah. So Keith was long in the ground, and the organizers of the Olympics were still asking if he might want to come out and play drums with the Who for the London Olympics. So, needless to say, that did not happen.
It amazes me, Brian, in this day and age, when we think about downloading, streaming music, etc. When I hear the word Napster, I'm like, what? When? What a world it is now compared to 25 years ago this week in music history.
Yeah, this is kind of when the you-know-what hit the fan as far as downloadable music went. So April 12th, 2000, and it happened to be Metallica. They were the band that decided, we're not having this. So they filed a lawsuit against Napster, Yale University, and the University of Southern California and Indiana University for copyright infringement over what they called, quote, theft of our music and art. So basically they were saying, look, Napster is taking our music, they're downloading it, and people are downloading onto their computers for free without paying us, and that's not okay. So it proved to be a watershed moment in popular music. Metallica pitting themselves against rising technology and music fans who had found this way to share music without paying the artists. So I don't know. We can have a debate about did they win? The short answer is yes. Napster was ordered to pay royalties to hundreds and thousands of artists at the cost of millions of dollars and had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But digital music downloads, they went forward and would replace sales of CDs, vinyl, and tapes in the coming years. Essentially bringing, this reign of the music industry and record companies to their knees. And I don't know that they'll ever recover from that. But it was Metallica that brought it forward. Did that do them any credit with fans? A lot of them, no. There were a lot of Metallica fans who turned their back on the band at that point, saying, obviously it's all about money for you guys. You don't care about the music. But I get the point that Metallica were making, which was that, this is our art, this is our livelihood, and even though we've been paid well in the past, we don't want to be stolen from. So
it amazes me the way that world and that model has changed, because you're right. We could, you say they were paid well in the past, and then we could go back to the absolute control that labels had over artists, that both artists and labels had over us as consumers. But I think the pendulum has swung way too far the other way. It's almost as if you get paid pennies on the dollar for your art these days.
I agree. I think there needs to be a middle ground. I totally agree that artists should be paid. I think maybe at one point, that pay was a little bit too much. But there has to be a happy medium there. They certainly are entitled to be compensated for what they create, but how much is the question.
And if you look at the price of concert tickets these days, you find out exactly how it is they are making their money now.
And as well with merchandise, because that's really the only venue that they're going to make profit on is through concert venues and merchandising venues. So those prices have all gone pretty high.
It was on This Week in 2016, that we bid farewell to Merle Haggard at the age of 79. But Merle belongs to a rare club in pop music. What club is this you speak of, Brian?
A very, very exclusive club. It's a very unusual club. There are only 5 members, musicians anyway. There are some other actors and artists who have part of this club as well. But Merle is one of 5 artists who belong to the club of people who died on their very own birthday.
Oh, my gosh.
So Merle died on his birthday on April the 6th. He was also born on April the 6th. And there are only 4 other people in music history. A fellow named Mel Street, who was a country music singer, died in 1978 on his 43rd birthday. Mike Douglas, who did have a music career before he was a TV host, died on his own birthday. Fran Warren, who was a big band singer, died on her birthday. And Sidney Beckett, who was a jazz saxophonist, died on his birthday. So there's only 5 people who have ever died on their very own birthday, and Merle Haggard was one of them.
A rather dubious distinction, but very interesting nonetheless.
There you go. It's not a fact that most people remember or even may want to remember, but I thought it was interesting to note.
And when it comes up in a Jeopardy category, you're going to remember that you heard it with Brian Allison on This Week in Music History.
There you go.
Brian, it's been fun. As always, we'll talk to you in a week's time.
You bet. Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Brian Allison is our resident musicologist. He joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History, and you can follow his musings and more about This Week in Music History on his Facebook page, which is called the same thing, This Week in Music History. It happens every Monday morning at 11 here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Thank you very much, Matt, not only for listening from Mount Forest, which I love. Gosh, do I like going up that way. Wellington County is one of my favorite places to meander on the motorcycle. I don't know why I always find myself heading in that direction, and Mount Forest is a favorite stop. But Matt keeps me honest today. It wasn't 12 impaired drivers. It was 12 impaired charges to 4 drivers early Friday morning in the region. Look, that's 1 every 15 minutes instead of 1 every 5. Fair enough, though. 4 drivers, 12 charges total, not 12 drivers in an hour. Bottom line, 4 people, 1 hour, 1 early Friday morning in this region. And that is 4 too many, because the fact that anybody is still getting behind the wheel of a vehicle when they have had too much to drink is beyond my comprehension. Maybe we should have those little breathalyzer things that you have to blow into before you can even start your vehicle. How about that? And by the way, you know that we have created here in the region of Waterloo an election sign bylaw whereby there are greater limits around where signs can be placed. A little different in the Royal City of Guelph. And in the early days of the campaign, a couple weeks in, Guelph has already received over 100 complaints about election signs. But if I were a betting man, the complaints come in from the competitors in that race, right? The opponents' campaign teams are noticing that their opponent's sign is too close to an intersection, too close to their sign, on a street that it's not supposed to. I don't know. Maybe generally people complain about election signs because, they kind of make a mess of the landscape, don't they? Just as we're trying to get to spring, up springs all the election signs. I think David Drewe will want to talk about the federal election, and he's here with Drew's views right after this update from the 570 News Center. Stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years, but you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree-planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is our friend David Drewe. That was not written about him, but Scott Wicken tells a whale of a tale. And David Drewe, did I say it wrong? Is it Wickens?
Oh, no, it's Wicken,
No, yeah.
but Whale of a Tale, that's actually Danny Michel. That's a Danny Michel song.
That
You're
is
mixing
also
up your
true.
local musicians.
Oh, I like Danny Michel. I was actually thinking about him on the weekend. Haven't heard from Danny in a while. David Drewe knows all things local as well. He owns Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, for Drew's Views. I missed you last week. How did you get on with Larry? Was everything okay?
Everything went fine.
Good.
I would note, though, that I asked him as we were closing, I'm like, so how did we do for time? He's like, we're right on the mark. And I'm like, I'm going to tease Mike next week.
Yeah, whatever. Time schmime. Besides, never let the clock interrupt a good conversation. I love your first point on the notes you sent over. Jagmeet Singh is not running for Prime Minister. Is
Breaking.
Jagmeet Singh running? Come on.
It's this big shift, and honestly, I think this is a sign of how bad things are for the NDP. It's not that he's acknowledging reality and saying, I don't have a shot at becoming Prime Minister. This is the way of saying, you need to vote NDP because we're doomed otherwise. This is the way of taking it off the table. This is almost like Kathleen wins. We don't have a shot, so please vote for us. This is kind of that, but not as alarm bells from the ceiling. It's a bigger change than it seems just from the little bits of verbiage. This is a huge tack change, and we'll see how it goes for them. It seems to be already picking up a little bit in BC for the NDP, but Lord knows if that's a blip or not.
I wonder where the NDP goes from here, because it is not going to be a pretty picture when the results are in.
Well, the biggest problem for the NDP is the federal NDP. They have themselves tied together unlike any other party where you have one membership for federal and provincial NDP. But then you've got your Alberta NDP and your federal NDP. Then you've got your BC NDP versus your federal NDP. It's only, even in Ontario, Merritt Stiles' campaign platform was really not as left-wing as Jagmeet Singh's. And by the way, what was it the federal NDP you're running on today? Oh, yeah, federal rent control.
Federal rent control?
Yeah. Like, that's just it. The NDP, that's the biggest problem with the NDP is the federal NDP. It's not only tainting the messages of their provincial bodies, but they all want to be running for provincial office anyway. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pick on the little folks.
I know it's not nice, but it's reality right now, and it's going to be. I'm fascinated to see.
But by the way, my NDP candidate is Lauren Bruce, friend of your show.
I have. Well, is he the last time? Lauren, say hi back next time. I like Lauren. I like Lauren a lot, and
I've done panels on your show with him
in many years past. Yes, and I sent a message to Lauren, and I didn't hear back, and I was
when
bummed.
Harold's wife collapsed on election night in 2011. Lauren was the NDP candidate we were running against, and he was classy enough to not only congratulate Harold on the win, but to just say, "Yeah, all that, Dave. How is Betty doing?"
Yeah.
Apparently, we got an email from Bob Rosehart's office congratulating Harold, but no one ever saw it. But Lauren Bruce is classy.
I will never forget. Can we just go into the archives for a moment? But the use of the Bob Rosehart website because he didn't register his own domain soon enough, and some enterprising disturber, a shift disturber, got in on bobrosehart.ca or .com before Bob Rosehart could.
And pointed it to the Ignatieff.me website. And, oh my gosh, that was such a little tempest in a teapot. But the best part about it was like when Andrew Telegny was filmed saying, and I agree with Elizabeth May, that our number one priority has to be to elect Stephen Harper as our prime minister. He said a stupid thing. There was a couple laughs about it, but it was all the dirty tricks talk and pushing it that made it such a viral video. It wasn't anything about the Conservatives putting it up. It was all the complaints about it being dirty tricks. And I'm convinced that was the same thing with the Rose Heart sites. Like, yeah, if I had my druthers with Harold's campaign, Harold never would have signed off on anything like that. I wish it hadn't happened at the time. It was a distraction to us. But you look back and you're like, yeah, all the freaking out they did over that did not do them any favors.
All right, that was a tangent, but boy,
Sorry
oh boy.
about
No,
that.
I just, as soon as Bob Rosehart's name came up, it's the first thing that popped into my head. Okay, let's bring it into the local campaign here. And in Kitchener Centre, I get the sense that you feel as though the incumbent, Mike Morris, has himself a fight on his hands.
Yeah, I wish him well. The polls still indicate, but, but what are the polls for Kitchener Centre? What we are seeing, though, is this election campaign where it's not really about anything except the leadership on who can stop Donald Trump. And it might be very, very hard for Mike's campaign to crack through that, regardless of his local value and his local constituency. If the issue is Trump, it just becomes a lot harder for him. So all I want to say there is everybody on his team, you need to knock on twice as many doors as you thought, and you need to be more enthusiastic than you believed possible. And I wish you well.
What is it about this campaign, David, that you feel is different from past federal election campaigns?
Well, I referenced the NDP policy on... Oh, yeah, rent control.
Yeah.
It's like the Liberal one on school lunches, all these people who want to be premier. But nobody's really paying attention to election policy this campaign. This is the same thing that Mike Morris needs to worry about. This is coming down to leadership and who it will be best to fight Donald Trump. And that is a single-note election. So you aren't really voting on who's going to provide the best rent control. You aren't really voting on capital gains reinvestments not being taxed if it goes into a Canadian business. You're not. All of these really, really good policies the parties are putting forward aren't of the moment. So that's just really, really, listen, put it this way. Have you heard any screaming about where's the costed platform from anybody?
Yeah.
Is that not just unique right there in and of itself?
But we had a call earlier today that touched on this very thing. And the caller's point was there is nothing that we are going to do about Donald Trump. He's been elected in the United States. We can't unelect him. We didn't ask for him to be elected. We need to look after our own house. Who will do that best? And to your point, if we're not talking about that, what the heck are we doing?
Bingo. But no, it is very, very fair, though, to say that Trump is the issue and you need somebody who's going to manage that as our number one priority. Like they're by far our largest trading partner. The elephant and the ant or the elephant and the mouse, whatever it was Pierre Trudeau said. But this could all change. Stellantis shut down for, was it a week?
2, I think.
2, and that was just the first one right away. What happens a week from now? And how many more businesses are going to be looking at this, not as the prospect of Trump, but the reality of I need the help now? And in that case, is that a lifeline for the NDP to punch through? Because they tend to be the ones who are most generous with promises of benefits. And if they're able to say, hey, we'll be there for you, we'll keep the banker thinking about you, the little guy. Is this an option for them to save a lot more furniture than they expected, maybe even grow a couple seats? If it comes down that way, then do some people start looking more at the Conservative Party as a save my assets as opposed to, if this starts to become the reality as opposed to the fear of, then all of a sudden some of these issues that we're dismissing on policy grounds right now as irrelevant, all of a sudden might become the fundamental thing at some point. Knowing who's going to put $200 a month more in my pocket versus the other guy, that sometimes moves votes.
I wouldn't mind somebody putting $200 more a month at the debt.
Neither. Okay. But yeah, we're looking to stagflation soon, so that's...
Yippee.
Yeah.
David Drewe owns Negotiating Change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. He joins us every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drew's Views. And we continue here on the Mike Farwell Show. The new Sun City. I don't even know what David means, but we'll find out coming up. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings, 11:30, David Drewe joins us for Drew's Views. We get his unique perspective on all things mostly political. And we've had a nice trip down memory lane today, too, thinking back to the failed Bob Rosehart Liberal campaign in Waterloo some time ago. Anywho, actually, it was Kitchener-Conestoga, wasn't it?
It was Kitchener-Conestoga,
it was.
yes.
Okay. Is this is the U.S. the new Sun City? Artists united against apartheid. What mean you by this, good sir?
Well, it started informally, but a whole bunch of musicians just made a decision way back when that they were not going to be playing the big resorts in South Africa anymore. And most notable was Sun City because of apartheid. And they were making this political statement. And then eventually Little Steven of the E Street Band led an artist's crazy song called I Ain't Gonna Play Sun City, which is really worth a watch on YouTube just for the oh my goshness of it. But now you've got bands canceling tours in the U.S. Neil Young, even, which is weird because he is an American citizen, dual citizenship. But with all the stuff I've said about Trump, I'm not sure they'll let me back in. And what do you do? That's the weirdest thing in the world.
I mean, listen, I can't speak for Neil Young and what it might mean for him and his public statements. I haven't heard, but not being able to speak for him, I can tell you, David, I literally just returned from a trip to the United States. And granted, it's a little bit of an insulated trip because you go with the hockey team whose job it is to play there, etc. But it could not have been more mundane than any other trip I've ever taken, including the crossing at the border. And the folks that I met in Flint, Michigan were lovely.
A few weeks back on the Friday 4 when Mayor Dave was here, we were talking during one of the breaks. We were like, well, yeah, I was thinking about going down to Nashville, but, talk about a Republican state. It's like, yeah, but it's Nashville. It's the most democratic city in the middle of so, who are you trying to penalize here? You're actually taking money out of the pockets of the people who support us. It's so complicated with that. It is complicated. And, even a lot of Trump supporters down in the U.S. are still going wait a minute, Canada? Joe Rogan's on our side. He sees no reason for them to be going after. Now, Greenland, on the other hand, he sees a good case to invade. but we're okay here in Canada. It's so weird. But you go onto the CBC app and you will find a couple stories down.
Oh, you didn't.
I didn't mean to.
All these years. You usually check to make sure your phone's still on silent.
No, that was me actually accidentally opening the video in the links we had there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That made it fun.
But yeah, you just have these, you go down the article on the CBC and, it's advice on how to handle your cell phone or bringing a spare one when you cross the border. People who have been asked how they feel about Trump and getting turned away if they weren't sufficiently docile. Great for you with how it went, but there's a whole crowd of people out there, especially aspiring, I don't want to say aspiring, professional musicians who aren't at the Neil Young level. They can't afford to plan a tour, go through everything, and then just get dinged at the border for a day and a half, and all of a sudden every date on their tour has to be rearranged by a day and a half. That doesn't work out.
Right. Interesting. It's a wild time that I never thought I would live through. Okay. And your last note on your notes is about the best campaign launch ever. Do tell.
The Strategists.
Okay. It's one of the podcasts you thoroughly enjoy.
I thoroughly enjoy, and there are three hosts, Zane Velji, Stephen Carter, and Corey Hogan. And Corey Hogan is going to be a Liberal candidate in this election. He is replacing a candidate who got pulled off the ballot on a Friday afternoon for, I forget what that candidate's offense was. It was one of the Liberal ones. But so they do this podcast as of last Monday. It's The Strategists, episode 1857, Candidate Hogan. And they are just sitting there talking about Corey's candidacy. And I have never heard so many expletives. I have never, they are literally just, you can't tell if it's a joke or not. Because it's what would be the worst possible way to launch your campaign? Well, maybe launch it on April 1st. Make your campaign website april1.ca. That's one with a number. not O-N-E. In his campaign bio, he talked about winning an Irish stew competition. But you are sitting there listening to this for a half hour, and you are really trying to figure out, is he actually a candidate here, or is this an April Fool's joke?
It sounds like a joke.
But it's not. Really? He is the legitimate Liberal candidate, which makes that podcast, again, The Strategists, episode 1857, Candidate Hogan, so amazing.
Okay.
He calls one of his constituents, I forget what the exact word was, basically an idiot, on the air. And it's just like they're bringing up stuff that other people have said and all the dirt, and it just gets hilarious. And you can't tell, like, you really? But then he's talking about the vetting program and how the previous episodes of The Strategist come up, and Stephen Carter. And it's so worth a listen because, yeah, I'll tell you now it's legit. But I also tell you, when that episode ended, I was messaging friends who also listened to it. And I'm like, was that legit, do you think? Like, I really, because it's like, that's the kind, it's that episode where you think of this is how you launch your campaign. This is also how you end your campaign, because it was literally one of those ones where you could picture the party going, we're pulling him as a candidate after that.
But he was already replacing somebody who had been pulled. So maybe because of Corey's background and him being one of the three hosts on The Strategists, he's perhaps approaching this in a farcical, whimsical way?
Well, that's just it. Liberals are doing so well. They're talking about them winning seats in Alberta into the 2 digits. And if they're into the 2 digits, this riding would be one of those winnable seats for them. So I'm just, I think it's Waterloo, the federal Conservatives have parachuted a candidate in, and it caused a little bit of an uproar.
Yep. Now,
if that candidate came in and did something like this, it would cause quite the uproar because he's a parachuter. And what's he doing with all of this? But I have no idea what to make of this campaign launch, whether this is the sign of something sincere or whether this is the sign that he's phoning it in. But, let's think about this, too, just on a final note, perhaps. We've gone through, I think, 8 candidates last week. 2:00 today, I believe, is the deadline. So we'll probably be getting some more after that when they can't be replaced. But think about all the chloroplast that's just been wasted.
Listen, I'm amazed, quite frankly, and you and I were talking about this before we went on the air this morning. You need 343. Thanks to the new ridings and boundaries, that's how many seats exist in the country federally. 343. So even if we're going to keep the NDP in the equation as one of the big 3, you're talking 1,000 people, give or take, 1,000 people across this great nation of ours that we can't find to represent us in our federal parliament.
And I came back at you that it's even worse than that, because I'm saying, geez, we don't even need them from every party.
I know.
And by the way, we forgot about the Bloc in Quebec. But
they only run in Quebec.
Yeah, but we don't need them from every party. But geez, if it's, let's say, a legitimate 2-horse race in most ridings, at least those 2. I don't care what parties they are. In some cases it's red-blue, in some cases it's orange-red, in some cases it's blue-orange, green here locally. Whatever colors they are in Quebec for the Bloc. But if you've got a shot at being a member of Parliament, can you be half decent?
Yes, please. Yeah. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And on that note, us agreeing, we'll leave it for today. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
David Drewe owns Negotiating Change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies, and he's right here with us every Monday morning at 11:30 on the Mike Farwell Show. It's Drew's Views, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Seriously, why can we not find, I mean this, 1,000-ish people? I don't care if you have a chance in that riding or not. If you're a federal political party, surely you can get somebody intelligent, coherent, eloquent to run for you in this country. We've got 42 million people. Come on. Surely that can happen. Surely we don't need 2 levels of local government to pass back and forth the jurisdiction of a road so we can build a bypass for cyclists and pedestrians. That couldn't be happening in the modern day, could it? Do we need a CTS site in our city? And who wants $500 million to play baseball? We got a lot we can talk about in the next hour. Rant or Rave coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
It is your daily Talkback Hour. And on Mondays, in keeping with tradition on this radio station, it is rant and or rave. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you could not possibly be happier. Share the good news. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. That is our toll-free number. And here's toll-free Jay to start off Talkback. Rant or rave, Jay?
Well, I'm just very thankful for both Vlad and for Austin. Because once Austin gets 2,858 points, he will be the best player of all time.
He's not going to get 2,858 points, Jay. No, he's not.
No, actually, but we can all dream. And thankfully, you see with Vlad and Austin doing what they're doing is taking our minds off of the other events in the world that we can't really control.
There you go. And I like that. That's what sports should do. They should be a nice little distraction for us. Also, television, the boob tube, right? That's what we call it. The idiot box, it used to be called when I was a kid from time to time. Take your mind off of the other things. Austin Matthews, 9 straight 30-goal seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs. You know, he's almost at 400 goals already, Austin Matthews, in 9 years. No, we won't start talking about that. I don't even want to talk about that other thing with that other record because it takes a record away from Wayne Gretzky, and that's very difficult for my hockey-loving heart. Rockin' Ronnie, good afternoon.
Alrighty.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm
Good,
great.
you?
I'm good. Long time no see.
Yeah, yeah, not too long ago. The Leafs, maybe they can get as good as the Rangers, eh?
The Kitchener Rangers, you mean, of course.
Kitchener, well, naturally Kitchener, yeah.
Yeah.
What else do I know? Kitchener.
That's right.
I want to give a big shout out to a guy that's called the Negotiator.
David Schooley.
Yeah, David Schooley. You do a lot of advertising for him, and I'm not sure if I mentioned anything about him before, but it's amazing how he can sell houses. And I wish he would be listening to this. He's likely quite busy, and he is a busy man. We found that out. We Marlene and I, we sold our house here in Petersburg. It took him 1 week to sell our house. And you drive around and you see signs up about selling their house for sale, and it's sitting there for weeks, months, half a year, then it goes off the market. This guy's amazing, and not only is he doing well with his team there, the Titans, he's just an all-around good guy to talk to other than even business. You know, you get talking to him about different things, and late at night, he'll give you a call, and he's still working on a deal, you know him as well as I do, likely, because you advertise for him and everything, but it's fantastic that way he can do that. We wanted this house so bad in New Hamburg, so we bid on it right away, and then, of course, we had to sell ours, and everybody in the neighborhood was amazed how quick we had tons of people come through, 14 in one day, 14 real estate people with people, and it was just amazing how he did it. So
glad to hear that, Ronnie.
All righty.
All right, best of luck with the move.
Right on, thank you, and go Rangers.
Go Rangers, I love it. Rockin' Ronnie. We actually got a call about Ronnie on Rangers Talk Friday night after the Rangers eliminated the Flint Firebirds, and somebody said, hey, you heard about Weebs lately? Ronnie Weber, the Rockin' Ronnie of Petersburg, now about to move into New Hamburg. I'm glad it worked well for you with the Negotiator. And to Stephen, who called our show Friday night and wondered how Weebs is doing, there you go. Weebs is doing just fine. In fact, he poked his cute little face into this radio station earlier today. So there you go. Saw him in person, and there he is on the show. Grant, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
It is a good afternoon.
It is indeed.
You're a funny guy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I went down to Howl the Moon on Friday for a couple minutes, and I came back and I did some other things later on that night because I needed to get some gas. And did you at all watch 60 Minutes about that really horrible prison where Trump mentioned on his campaign that he's going to send...
Yes, I believe, was it Ecuador?
Yeah.
Or Salvador. I did see a bit of the story, though.
I don't know what his people are thinking. Just because a person has a tattoo from a soccer team that he is from his country that he's advertising, they make it sound. Oh yeah, they said that it could be
gang related. Yes.
What a jackwagon all of his people are.
Well said, Grant. Well said. It's really interesting. It's really interesting the kind of country that America has become in an awful hurry under this second term of Donald Trump so far. And every time Grant says, I'm funny, I can't help but think of Joe Pesci in Goodfellas.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you, I make you laugh, I'm here to fucking amuse you. What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny?
That's how I'm funny. Funny how? Like I amuse you and entertain you. With Rant or Rave, you entertain me. And it continues here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is your chance to have your voice heard. On Mondays, it is the Rant or Rave edition of Talkback. And Ranger Joe is with us next. Good afternoon, Ranger Joe, my friend. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mikey, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm also good. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Mikey, when I heard about that 14-year deal that the Jays have given Vladimir Guerrero, I want to get one thing straight. I like Vladimir Guerrero, but when you really boil it down, Mike, what I would have done if I was a manager of the Blue Jays, first of all, I wouldn't have given him 14 years. My God, that's an eternity. And in my view, anyway, he is an above-average hitter. Not bad, but he does go through slumps. And lately, it looks like they're going to keep him at first base, right? And I just think what I would have done, I would have signed him for 5 years. I would have chewed the bullet. I would have paid him his $35 million a year for 5 years. So that's an outlay of $175 million. $500 million is a lot of money, and it's not going to guarantee two things. It's not going to guarantee that his numbers are going to improve, and it's not going to guarantee that the Blue Jays are all of a sudden going to turn into a contending team. Those things just don't happen. And a lot of the Blue Jay fans are happy right now that they signed him, but these will be the same Blue Jay fans. If he doesn't improve his numbers, there'll be the same people in the seats booing him. That's just the way I feel about him, Mike. But like I said, I like the guy. He's a good player, but 14 years, $500 million, not a chance I would have given him that.
All right, Joe, appreciate the call. And listen, I get it. The numbers have been very good, though, right, with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And if I could make the comparison to light rail transit, forgive me, bear with me here, but remember, when we first proposed light rail transit for this region, we could have done, instead of doing it in two phases, we could have done the entire system all at once for like $1.8 billion way back when, okay? Instead, we phased it, And now phase 2 is going to cost all by itself $4.6 billion. Just let that sink in. So the point I'm making here is if you do it today, it's going to cost you less than if you do it tomorrow. So yes, $500 million is a whole heck of a lot of money. But you know what? By the time the 14 years is up, it's going to be a bargain to have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for that length of time, or for that price. $35 million a year will be nothing by the time this contract comes to an end. It's also sending a signal to the team and the fan base that we are serious about doing something here, trying to contend and building around this key piece of our baseball team, that piece being Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I get the numbers, just they make your head spin, right? But it's a completely different economy we're dealing with in sports. How many bums will Vladimir Guerrero Jr. put in seats? Bums in seats translates to revenue for the team. How much merchandise will be sold? That translates to a bottom line for the team. How many games will we win? How many playoff series will happen? It just goes on and on and on. Completely different economics, though, than we're used to. We don't understand stuff like that. The numbers are crazy. Chris, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good. So this is the second time I'm calling your show. I love your show. I always listen to it. But the last time I called was a couple of years ago when Justin Trudeau was running for Prime Minister again, I think.
Okay, so you haven't called since 2021. That's a long time ago.
I know. But I listen to you every day. I love the Rangers because, you know what, I could afford a ticket to go to the Rangers.
Yeah, great point.
Game.
Great point.
Now, with that being said, you know, everyone calls and complains about American politics. I think we have the same problem here in Canada, but no one wants to talk about it. The 3 years ago when I called Brian Burke, I think was his name, I said, what happened to the average Joe? How come they don't get a raise? How come the wage don't go up and everything else goes up? To your point, what you just mentioned, you pay today and you get a benefit tomorrow and years to come with the light rail transit, right? Vladimir Guerrero Jr., $500 million. How many lives have he saved? Look at our doctors and our nurses. Are they getting paid that much money? And the last time I checked, they're the one that's making a difference, saving lives. Vladdy make $500 million. How much Bo's going to make? How much going to be a ticket for the average Joe to go watch a game? Mike, listen, I'm going to hang up, and I want you to talk about this. You have way more experience than me, probably more knowledge than me, but this is how I am thinking. I can't afford to go to a game when you're going to pay these guys all this kind of money, and because the ticket's going to go up. The Blue Jays, they have to make money to pay these guys. How are they going to make money? Is butts in the seat. How much are one of those seats going to cost? I don't have money to put food on my table. I'm going to go see a Blue Jays game. I don't have money to pay my mortgage. I don't have money to pay my interest rate. Is anyone talking about that? I understand the sports. I love Vladdy. He's a good player. He's not a great player. He's not $500 million worth. But I'll tell you right now, okay, people need to eat. People need to survive. Life needs to be saved. That's where the money should be going. Mike, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, my friend, and you have a great day. Go Rangers.
Thank you, Chris. Go Rangers, absolutely. We're going to start a playoff series versus the Windsor Spitfires in Windsor on Thursday night. We'll pick up on, Chris, I will bet you dollars to donuts that Chris just struck a nerve with you. And we'll talk more about it as we continue. Rant or Rave on your Talkback Hour this afternoon. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Did Chris's call a few minutes ago strike a chord with you? What about the average Joe and the average Jane and our not 29% pay increases like the president of Conestoga College got, or the $500 million that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is getting to play baseball? See, the thing we always get into is, well, that money could be so much better spent, but that money is only being spent by the owner of the team or the employer of the baseball player, right? It's not public money that could go to hospitals or hiring doctors. But I've always wondered the same thing. It's one of the reasons that I get kind of turned off by awards shows. I would like to see an awards show, and maybe Rogers TV wants to pick this up. Let's do a nice big gala awards show for the doctors and the teachers and the first responders that make a meaningful impact in everybody's life. Where, I mean, I'm all for the celebration of art, but to see actors that make $20 million, $30 million, $40 million a movie stand up and give speeches about how grateful they are for a trophy, and I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to get off on a big tangent there, but I feel where Chris is coming from. And pro sports and the price of tickets, it's going to come out of our pockets, and it's getting priced out of the pocketbooks of average Joes and Janes. I remember when I could go to a Blue Jay game for $6. $6, you'd go sit up in the 500s, watch a Blue Jays game. But they've taken seats out of the stadium. The cost of things has gone up. They want to pay players $500 million over 14 years. I talked to a buddy yesterday who said he wanted to take his kid last year, $77 for a 500 level seat. $77. That's a whole lot more than $6, and he's paying it times 2 for him and his son. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts after what Chris had to say before. Let's go to Kyle next on Talkback. Kyle, rant or rave?
Rave, but you make a big impact on my life, my friend.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Where's my award show then, huh?
I'll give it to you. I'll
okay.
Start it off.
All right.
I'd like to make a rave against Wayne Gretzky. He's only 1 goal away from tying Alex Ovechkin's record.
Don't make me hang up on you.
Lace him up. Why not? Why can't Wayne Gretzky come out of retirement? We've had a couple of good Canadians back in the 70s come back out of retirement and play the sport of the game. Do they not?
Sure.
A couple of, so why not Wayne Gretzky? Lace him up, get him back, get him out of retirement. Go for it. Why not? Records are meant to be broken, Mike. I know it hurts your feelings because he's not Canadian.
No, it's got nothing to do with him not being Canadian. It's just got to do with when I was a kid, Wayne Gretzky was my entire hockey universe. Like, he was everything. And so to see any one of his records fall hurts my heart.
I know. Well, maybe you should go for the record. Why not?
Yeah. If it was a record for most words spoken in a show, I'd win.
There you go.
There you go.
Won.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Mike. Have a great one, my friend.
Thanks, Kyle. You too. I'm sorry. It's got nothing to do with Alex Ovechkin, his politics, his ethnicity. It's just got to do with it not being Wayne Gretzky. Tough on me. That's all. An update from the 570 News Center, and then we continue with Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just before we go back to the phones, I need just a moment, okay? Bear with me and brace yourself, because as you just heard in that update with Matt Hutchison, there has been a winter weather travel advisory issued for snow this afternoon. Believe it or not, I'm not even going to go off on a little rant about it being April the 7th and we have a winter weather travel advisory. I'm going to leave that part alone, because this winter weather travel advisory has been issued as we are expecting. Now, brace yourself. Are you sitting down? Can you sit down? If you're not sitting, please sit. If you're driving, you might want to consider pulling over, because we are under an April 7th winter weather travel advisory, because we are expecting up to 2 centimeters of snow. 2 centimeters. A Chihuahua's paws won't get white in 2 centimeters of snow. What? A winter weather travel advisory for 2 centimeters of snow. What on earth? It's not April 1st, right? I acknowledge it's not supposed to snow at all on April the 7th, but sometimes it does. 2 centimeters does not a winter weather travel advisory make. Goodness gracious me. I just needed to say that. And now we return to your regular programming. Tom, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Why would you pay $6 to see the Blue Jays? It's a joke. We should send all the executives back to Cleveland, where they came.
Well, they did a good thing now, Tom. They got Vladimir Guerrero signed.
You think that's a good thing?
I do think
what
that's a good
thing.
thing.
Done in the last 20 years?
They signed. I just told you what they did. They signed Vladimir Guerrero.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to you. It matters to me. That's okay.
And then same thing with the Leafs. You got to fire those guys. If you don't do anything within the 5 years or going the right way, you got to change the head office.
All right. So 5 years and then you're out if it doesn't work. You know, I've been doing this show for almost 8 years. How's it going for me?
It's got nothing to do with the sports. It's the executives at Rogers.
I like the executives at Rogers.
Well, what else would you say? And then, so I'm saying the Leafs, they got to go. Those guys.
You want? Okay, I get it, Tom. You want the front office gone. With the Blue Jays, with the Leafs, I get it. And why would I pay $6 to go see a Blue Jays game? Because it's cheap, and that's my middle name. I'm about as cheap as they come. But I remember this vividly. It was a beautiful summer's night, and I was working in Toronto. That just goes to show you how long ago it was. My first time working in Toronto. I also went back to Toronto between 2011 and 13. But anyway, this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I was working out of our City Hall bureau downtown, and I came out one night. It was a little after 6. It was a really nice night, and I'm like, well, I could get in my car and fight traffic up the DVP to go back home to Scarborough, or the Blue Jays are home tonight. So I wandered my little patootie down to Front Street and got me some tickets for $6 to go see a Blue Jays game. And then I went home after that when there wasn't any traffic on the DVP. I enjoyed myself. That's just why I did it. Andre, rant or rave, good afternoon.
Well, I got both, technically. My first is rave, is welcome back. And that's Lucy Ocas, my dog. But no, congratulations.
Wait, you named your dog Lucia Hocus?
Lucy.
Oh, Lucia Hocus. Okay. I'm sure the head coach of the Kitchener Rangers is thrilled by that.
But, so congratulations to them. And it's going to be very interesting for the Windsor. But anyway, so that's my rave. My rant is, Mike, as Canadian, and we've seen this, people have been saying it for many years, that we're letting Canada, the citizens going down about the economy, about our budget, about everything about us. And I don't support Trump. But the thing is that he is doing United States first, and I do support that. And that would have been my question to David Drewe, what he thought about it. So what do you think about that?
All right, Andre. Thank you for the call. Yes, I understand that Donald Trump thinks he's doing the United States first, but I have not heard one person that has said anything other than this will be an economic disaster, not just for the United States, but for many other parts of the world. So I'm not behind it at all. I'm all for supporting local. You know that. But I think that Donald Trump's policies are going to cause economic ruin. That's just from what every person I've heard. Christine, rant or rave to you.
I just want to comment on your remark about 2 centimeters of snow.
2 centimeters of snow, Christine.
Yes. Today is my birthday, and I don't want snow.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Christine. It's funny. My mom's birthday was on Friday, and my mom always talks about the snow that would happen on her birthday at different times, because my mom is like me. We don't like the winter time. And so when her birthday rolls around on April the 4th and it snows, it sticks out in her memory. But she always said to me, even as a kid, Mikey, and then she started calling me Michael, don't expect spring until after my birthday, because I remember on this day, on this year, we had snow on my birthday. I can't handle it. I don't want it today. But I also don't need a winter weather travel advisory for 2 ding-dang centimeters of snow. Give me a break. Terry, you're next, and there's a line for you if you want to be on Rant or Rave today. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones. Mondays are always busy on Talkback with rants or raves. Terry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. I'm back again. Listen, the couple of people that complained about Vlad's contract, I mean, it's private money. If you don't want to see the guy get paid that much, then don't watch it or don't go to games. That's the simple answer to that. But, Mike, I have to take issue with you and your 2 centimeters of snow. It's not the snow, Mike. It's the wind.
Settle down. Terry, come settle
Mike,
down.
Listen, Mike. Listen, last week we had that snowfall in your
I thought you were pulling my leg. You're being serious about this?
I am being very serious, Mike. because
Terry, come
last
on.
week, I was out London Way last week, the day we had that ice and snow. There was no snow out London Way, but yet I saw many, many vehicles on its roof and up against the median ditches.
Why do you think that was?
Because of the wind.
Because they're idiots.
The roads, well, true, but...
Yeah, okay,
you
well
can have-
then.
You can have 30 centimeters of snow. It's not going to fix idiots. But anyway, it's not so much the amount of snow. It's the roads that will freeze up and cause, like, when you put on skates, it's a little bit slippery. So I think that's more the issue. Mike, just before I go, I'd rather have 30 centimeters of snow with no wind and then have 1 or 2 centimeters of snow with wind, because I tell you, it's easier. You have more traction on snow
I
than
get you.
do on ice.
And Terry, you don't want the humidity, you just want the heat. I get it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Terry, stop it. It's 2 if we can't... Oh, my goodness. I'm so vexed by it. I'm so vexed. Lisa, good afternoon.
I don't know how to follow Terry.
I know. He's just, it's not the snow, it's the wind. Okay.
And it is. If you're out in a rural community, I can tell you the wind can really, really take things to another level. But
2 centimeters of snow? It's going to take 2 centimeters of snow to another level? Come on. Okay.
It'll go around 10 times before it's done. That's the thing. So my call today, I don't like to rant at my fellow Canadians, but I want a kind of a gentle rant at the undecided voters who have decided that they're going to vote Liberal based on the fact that Carney axed the carbon tax. And I want people to do some research. If that's the reason that they're jumping over to the Liberal Party, to do some research on what exactly Carney did, because all he did was put the carbon tax to zero. It's still sitting there in our government. It can be changed to anything after the election. So people should be very aware that what's happened right now does not necessarily stay in place after the election, and they need to do some more research before they decide that that is the way they want to go. So that's my rant for today. And I'm hoping we don't get snow tonight because my tires are no longer snow tires.
All right, Lisa, thanks for that. My beloved and I were just talking about that last week, and she said, it's time to get the winter tires off, right? And I'm like, no. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, not that she's made the appointment yet, I don't think, but isn't it fun? You just never know around here. But April should be the season you can think of removing one's winter tires. And to Lisa's point, do some research. Go beyond the headlines if you can, and I get it. Like, you're busy, and we're going to do our best on this show to keep you up to date. And on the note of the carbon tax, you will get, just in time for the federal election, your last rebate on the previously imposed revenue neutral carbon tax. I say revenue neutral with my tongue firmly in cheek, but yeah, it's a nice little pre-election goodie. Who knew? The timing is just so coincidental and fortunate for the federal Liberals, isn't it? Bob, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
I hate to depress you.
Oh, gosh. Why do you want to do that? I'm already depressed about the 2 centimeters of snow, Bob.
Well, it's just because I don't know about you, but I remember being a kid and wearing my winter jacket on May 2 for weekends.
Settle down.
And I don't think I know I'm older than you, but I'm not
You just
grandpa or nothing.
dial that back about 20% there, big fella.
What? I said that I'm not. I know I'm not. I'm older than you.
Yeah, but not that much older, eh?
Well, I'm not. I said I'm not your granddad.
Okay.
And take a look at what Pierre's talking. Don't just listen to the tax cuts. You sound a whole lot like Trump. Have a good day, Mike.
Okay, Bob, thanks for the call. I remember 2 things about snow in May. I remember being away on the May 2-4 weekend in Baston with my best friend. He still insists I'm wrong on this, but I'm not. I'm telling you that I'm right. We went to see a Red Sox game at Fenway, and it snowed. It was Red Sox, Angels. For some reason, I remember this one so vividly, and the Angels won at 6-5. But anyway, we sat out there. in the center field bleachers and got snowed on. It was the May 2-4 weekend in Boston. He says it was rain. I 100% disagree. And I have a picture saved somewhere. Maybe I'll find it and post it. I'm going to try to find it. I think I have it saved on my phone because I remember the snow on May the 11th. What year, I can't be sure, but it was so much snow that I wrote May 11th in the windshield, the snow on the windshield of my car, and then put a picture on social media. So I know that the big 2 centimeters we're getting today will not be the last, or might not be the last. I just find it incredibly amusing that 2 centimeters of snow warrants a winter weather travel advisory from Environment Canada. I mean, what is wrong with us if 2 centimeters of snow is something we need to be warned about? We can handle this. Trust me, you got this, big fella. You got this. Ibrahim, you're next on my list, and there's a line for you if you want to be a part of Rant or Rave today on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Breaking news from the studio windows here at the Boardwalk. I'm starting to see some sunshine. Winter weather travel advisory, sunshine in effect. If you don't have sunglasses, you better stay off the road. I shouldn't mock as much as I do, but sometimes I can't help myself. I can't help myself. Rant or Rave, your Talkback Hour continues. Ibrahim, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, just I was going to mention in the beginning when you mentioned the snow, you would be surprised. Just I was going to mention, if you remember 1999, April 23rd in Toronto. I was living in Toronto, holy school, no subway, no streetcar, nothing, 4 days. And Mayor last month called the military to clean the city. You remember,
that
right?
was in April? No.
Yeah, it was April 23rd.
Was it?
I remember. Yes.
Oh, yes. Man. I did not remember that being April. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you are old enough to remember like me anyway.
Well, no, I remember the Army being called in for the snow. That I remember. I didn't remember it was in April.
Last one he called
the
city, yeah. 4 days. I was attending some courses. I was taking courses in Seneca College and no school, nothing. 4 days staying home.
No, see, this says, I had to look it up. No, I'm sorry, Ibrahim, but it was January 14th, 1999. Then Toronto Mayor Mel Lastman notoriously brought in.
I think it was April.
No, my friend, April. I'm looking at the interwebs right now. They do not lie, and it's the Toronto Star. The Toronto Star never lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then my mistake. Then
that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Don't bring no more misinformation over here. Okay. Have a good day, Ibrahim. I do remember also, and I was telling you this before the break, the time that it snowed on May the 11th, and it sticks out because I took a picture of it, and I wrote, or I stenciled into my car in the snow, May 11th, and took a picture. I found the picture during the commercial break. It's on our Facebook page. Check it out for yourself, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. It was May the 11th, 2020. Yeah. So you know what that means, right? Every time you say 2020, everybody's mind automatically goes to the same place. So COVID had just basically begun. We were a few months into it. The 2 weeks to flatten the curve had turned into 3 months by that point. And we got snow on May the 11th. Come to think of it, what the heck was I doing outside? I shouldn't have been outside then. I was still coming to the office every day, getting in my car to come to work, to have these conversations with you. And I wrote May 11th into the snow. And you can see it for yourself on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. Okay, I've got to get you to the 570 News Center for your 1 o'clock update. I've got to get you to the Rob Snow Show, Now You Know, taking you through the afternoon until 3. And as you know, Rob will have plenty more in the way of conversation with you and for you. And I'm sure Donald Trump's name will come up once or twice. Mark Carney's name will come up once or twice, maybe even Pierre Poilievre's name a few times in the next couple of hours. As I look ahead at our program tomorrow, one of our local candidates for the federal election is among the highest spenders in the country on digital media so far. And also, Do you know how much the government spending has ballooned since 2015? Well, I've read a report that tells us just how much, and we're working on getting one of those authors of that report on our show tomorrow. Plus, the singing bus driver that just got a thumbs up from Howie Mandel. You don't want to miss the show tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9, okay? My name's Mike Farwell. Bye for now.